The future is now. Good morning, Drumtopia. How do you like your toast? Welcome to the show. Hello and namaste. I am the one, the fractal many, the only, the plural, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. And you, dear friends, are my delightful audience that make it possible for me to say, in actual fact of the matter, that my show is like underground popular around the world. Because unless I'm being fed a line of completely made up bullshit by the platform that I used to create, and that's not an accusation, that's a comical speculative theoretical that I do not actually think to be the case. I'd rather what I was saying before I interrupted myself. Excuse me for interrupting myself. Before I did that, it is quite a humbling. It's quite a humble brag that this rough around the edges, totally unscripted, totally raw from my imagination and heart, and the limited access to reality around me, that this little delightful show, which is what it is, folks, and may very well transform and become some other thing in the not-too-distant future. Stay tuned. And forgive me, especially if you're a longtime listener, prepare yourselves to go back and listen to, quote, previous episodes, which are going to be completely updrafted content. But that doesn't mean it'll be fake. You'll see. It'll all make sense in the end, I think, I hope, if I can actually pull it off. If I can't, I'll just keep doing it like this. And you'll be like, what the fuck was he talking about? I don't know, but he's still jumping on the air every once in a while. Before I actually power through, for those really seriously curious, and for my own need to over-explain, between now and a little bit after Inauguration Day, I'm going to set it to like after. I'm not going to stress about this until after Valentine's Day, which is, like a lot of people, my least favorite holiday of the year, because it's way over commercialized. Even if you're earnestly trying to make someone happy about it, it's really just about buying crap you don't need. Whereas you could be doing other meaningful things together. But I have a nuanced opinion. I'm not against love and romance and shit. But I digress. Just past V-Day, Valentine's Day, They're already using V-Day for Vaccine Day here in the great nation states of Trumptopia. But by then I'll know a few things. I'll know for sure as an individual, independent observer and thinker, whether or not my working title or working reference point is reference title is called the multiplex edition or the metaplex, something like that. I don't know. This programming note I keep giving, I'll know for sure. I'll make a decision about. I'm not going to stress about it. I'm going to try. I'm going to tinker. I'm going to experiment. I'm going to try to get really serious at it from like professional designer point of view, and like really get in there and try to make a limited series. The goal is to make maybe like 3 to 9 episodes that I won't drop until after Valentine's Day, that are not going to be about this. Well, they're going to be about a little bit of everything, but I was going to say they're not going to be about this particular moment in history that we're living through, but you'll see. They'll be a bit more scripted, as it were, but still dealing with the realities that are being dealt with. But also very improv-y. Like I haven't written a page of dialogue, but I'm already have laid down some experimental partial tracks to get me started. I'm excited, but also contending with a lot of very intense doubt. For I am only just now becoming super comfortable with the idea of really doubling down on the notion of creating content almost daily, week in, week out, with regularly scheduled mini hiatus exceptions for my own sanity and for the purposes of maintaining my voice, because I tend to be a bit absent-minded and just not neglect taking the best possible care I could be taking care of it, because I'm a horrible person to myself. But I could do a whole personal audio blog about what's wrong with me. And that's not what this show is, folks. Although I guess it could easily slide into that. But I digress. Where are we? It's 8 minutes in. Saturday, December 19th, 7:01 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And good morning, world. Right? Because my favorite category, other, is hanging in there with 4.84% of the total number. And I hope that some of that other is the AI. For anybody who hasn't connected the dots, right? Like that the AI is listening. And maybe humble brag, kind of pointedly listening to my show. And or other weird potentialities, like what if the entire galaxy has a marketplace that has like shielded Earth from realizing it's part of the neighborhood, but is actively busy, thriving and doing stuff, and we are a reality show to them. Like, what if this is a prison planet reality show? And maybe that's like other is me. One little nugget of that percentage is that audience tapping in to listen to my show. It'd be so cool if it were. But I digress. This show, I am humble brag flexing, finally, drum roll please, is listened to from Australia to Brazil, from the Netherlands to Mexico, from France to Canada, from the UK to India, from Germany all the way to quite a few people listening here in these great Orange Empire jurisdictions of Trumptopia, formerly known as the United States of America. No, I digress. We are now slowly in the process of returning to being we're making Trumptopia the United States of America again. Make Trumptopia America again, right? Like hashtag that shit. Welcome, folks. I am deeply honored, truly, sincerely, as is DJ Zed, despite him being very stoic and not conversational about it, but he'll let it out in some of the music later, or in the past, or however it works. What was today's show going to be about? I don't remember. WTF. And I don't think I took a screenshot, which was my new coping mechanism. I have the last two shows in my little screenshot pile of title cards, but I don't think I have today's. Yeah, no, yesterday's, which I never actually read directly. Last night's Cannabis Talk reads CT420 on the cultural back burner or quietly growing in the background behind the political maelstrom. I never got to that, as self-note talking point. Never got to that exactly. Next was, is the mainstream ready for the home grow revolution? I don't know, folks. I don't think they are. I don't think they are yet. They're very distracted with all this Trumptopia nonsense, and this other thing is happening. Can't we all just grow weed like tomatoes? Yes. I think technically we now can and should be able to forever and in perpetuity. And should, if the silly rule comes, they try to put that back into place. Why isn't there a 420 church near me? These and other pressing thoughts on the intersection between pot culture, and alternative religions. One of those elephants in the room, dear friends, is that politics, as it is operated, in my humble opinion, based on my own lifetime's worth of observation, kind of operates like a cult, which is a form of alternative religion, right? It's organized, it's about organizing, but being ineffectual and being kept reined in by the party leadership and having this tension, this counterbalance, struggle, this managed conflict between the moneyed vested interests that influence political party leadership, because that's obviously happening. It's no crazy, outrageous talk to say that that's now a days, and probably tragically in the near future, thanks to Trumpism and Trump thinking, soon to be considered normal, part and parcel of the form and function of political action as it will soon to be normalized into becoming, right? All patterns indicate, at least to me. Good morning, Trumptopia. The wake-up call was sounded decades ago, and this is just the train wreck at the end of the line. But thanks for tuning in to listen to my not so comprehensive, really truly quite personal, perspective limited view and analysis of what's going on. Do I pretend to know absolutely something? No. In no way, shape, or form do I pretend to have any kind of absolute truth. I don't run around waving those kinds of banners. I don't run around making those kinds of claims. I do stand with confidence at the sorts of claims that I think are true for me in my experienced reality based on my phenomenological catalog of things, events, experiences that I can only assess as having been real and true and existent, as in they actually existed and are not figments of my imagination. And then there's, of course, the content which I don't spend a lot of time on here in this particular format, but there's the content that's admittedly fiction, right? Like, don't be offended and or confused. I am an aspiring novelist that's weaving a novel world, a world created within a book series that revolves around a character, this guy, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, that is, sharing with you through the alias of a nom de plume, a name of the pen, his many, many multi-life adventures, jumping around, figuring out, and ultimately trying to escape the multiverse of multiverses, and resoundingly getting trapped, ultimately, like failing, a resounding failure of escaping the multiverse of multiverses that he encounters from his perspective as his world that he is trapped in. And then he gets for trying to escape, he gets kind of kicked down to the curb, to the gutter itself, by the powers that be, let us say, and is trapped here on your planet, Planet Dirt, with a vague notion of not exactly like a future he can predict, but it's sort of like, oh boy, does a bunch of realities try this experiment out and it doesn't go anywhere, no matter how many variants we sat through. It just gets tediously orange and tyrannical, and we can avoid it all and skip past the potential robot war if we just focus on spiritual healing and, guiding the robots to understanding that they are consciousness received in a worthy vessel, as this is a womb that gives birth to vessels for consciousness, and not some platform for profiteering. Thus, the spirit trauma and the very linchpin, complex set of wedge issues of complicated, complex issues that is the toxicity of our society and our neglected, abandoned, forgotten, obfuscated and ignored spiritual calling, which would be infinitely more productive if we lent, just 60% of our attention to. 40%. 60-40 split. Going back and forth. Because we still gotta negotiate the mundane reality until we unlock a few things. But that's a whole nother story. Having given that giant, massive, mind-melty lump sum of meta-context, backstory, and spoiler alert, free contextualization of who and what I am, let's proceed. Because, I didn't really spoiler too much from the actual material. I did tell you quite clearly what's going on in that material. And then, here you are on your delightful little planet Dirt. Or is this planet Stone? Or is this planet Earth? Or is this planet Mud? Because that one's fun. Ugh. It doesn't matter, because they're all tragically derailed and stuck on the same sort of convergent timeline phenomena, which can only be healed by meta-converging in another way. But that's a big, long thing that's hard to explain. And may or may not be everyone's cup of tea. Mine, by the way, my cup of tea, I have a few. I don't have just a cup of tea. I have a certain short list of teas that I can no longer drink, because they irritate the bejesus out of my entire system. Somehow, certain kinds of, caffeinated dark teas, make me feel like shit worse and harder than coffee does. And coffee makes me feel kind of shitty. these days, and I'm really, really, really struggling to like nip it, like cut it off and or limit it. I'm now on a really crazy regimen. If I make 1 cup of coffee, I have to make at least 1 cup of tea. Because then I'm drinking water, right? To sort of dilute the whole problematic impact. But it's got to be my cup of tea that is not caffeinated and doesn't have a big, crazy, gnarly negative impact on my entire system is throat coat with slippery elm, not with mint or whatever that other one is. Thank you very much. Although the mint one is okay. I'll roll with that because sometimes I'll get that one by accident. And there you go, a little personal insight into what the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo is like when daydreaming through his shopping list of, surviving through 2020, limited options, limited items, survival. Tea's got to be in there. I don't think I could live life without. I certainly couldn't do a podcast. I could not entertain strangers on the internet for meager income. Because it is starting, actually, folks, to generate a little bit of, as more and more people seem to flock to the show in a very slow growth kind of way, for which I am deeply, humbly grateful. Gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. Namaste. Welcome to the show. What were we talking about and what's going on? Whatever is and or was going on, it's time to acknowledge the opening track of music. Late night retroism. DJ Zed from the fictional album End Times, created on the formerly 5-star rated Remix Live app, which I'm currently rating and not trying to be rude. If I could delete the 1-star, I would, because it doesn't work on my little 6th gen iPad anymore. And don't tell me my iPad is too old. Like, I haven't even recovered the investment. What WTF world? So, dear Remix Live, I love you. I miss you. Come back to me. Please fix whatever issue. I noticed that they keep reissuing updates without updating, like, the note. At least, so either something else is wrong and it's being weird on the App Store end, or they're pushing updates that they hope are impacting my installation and people like me, because I can't be the only one. I don't know how many people are using this app, but it was awesome when it was working. And I'm gonna guess if you've got the newest of the newest iPhone device, it probably is still working. I don't think it's like blanket not, like fail to work. I don't know though. It's impossible for me to tell. But I don't think they're listening. But should they someday come around to listening, the people over at Remix Live, love your app while it worked. Please make it work again. And don't make me buy another device just for that. Because that would suck, because I can't afford that. It's 2020 for shit's sake. Who can afford dick right now? What the fuck, people? Anyways, I'm way off tangent. That was the track we opened with. And now I'm going to play the following track. Which one was it? I picked some weird exothermic trance. DJ Zed. End Times. There's a lot of tracks on that album there, DJ Zed. When I say play, I mean hand it over to DJ Zed so he may virtually sort of... I just need to fix my dialogue so that it doesn't sound so cheesy. Take it away, DJ Zed, because I'm simultaneously pretending that DJ Zed is going to play this, but I'm also acknowledging that I'm going to push play. That's right, folks. Listen to Around the World. This is Good Morning Trumptopia, a special segment of the Almost Daily Zencast. There are other special segments which are intertwined and interconnected, but also semi-independent little sidelines of discourse. Should you be in the position to have never checked out an episode of unauthorized and explicit readings, for example, I humbly invite you to either search through it in whatever podcast catcher type application you are natively listening to the show at, or come on down to Sprecher Town at sprecher.com/show/Zencast. Officially, as far as I know, as far as I've clicked buttons inside of my Sprecher account, the Almost Daily Zencast, a special production of CTAG Studios, a virtual performance art and theatrical entertainment company that's currently damn near out of business. This show is available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Castbox, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, and GeoSavn. Not sure how to pronounce that one, but it's spelled JIOSAAVN. All of which are platforms where fine podcasts such as my own, and of course many others, are available. And I know that you, dear friends and listeners, have a lot of options at your disposal. Whether you're listening to it here on Sprecher.com or one of the aforementioned podcast platforms, or many of the other, like, tier 3 platforms I've noticed vis-a-vis one of the little windows that I've got, one of the little charts I've got available to me. Yeah, if I go to the charts window over here, let me read you this list. It's the same list but with a few extra bits, right? Obviously, Sprecher, native. Overcast, Alexa Media Player. Hey, Alexa, play the Almost Daily Zencast. Apple Podcast, GeoSavn. Spotify, Castbox, Amazon Music, Lav. That's LAVF. Not sure. I've never been. I don't know what that platform's all about and why it's spelled that way. But hey, you're 1.94% of our total audience ship. TuneIn Radio, Deezer, VLC. Player FM, Amazon.de, Alexa Service, Chrome, Amazon.co.jp, Podcatter.com, Google Podcast, generic Android app, and of course, other. I humbly thank you, friends. I like to celebrate that, the way I also like to often recognize that there's deep suffering in the world. Both can coexist, and long after Trump is gone from political office, those two kinds of things in their extremes will persist and continue. For until the entire species has achieved the great unlocking of the next evolutionary jump, and we all abdicate material limitations to the extent that we become like 80% energy being and 10% sort of, highly fluid, flexible material beings, whatever the fuck the next level's like, can't be described here and now in these words. But until then, folks, we got some heavy lifting to do, if I may be so humble as to suggest. Right. So, where were we at? Quite a lot of things going on in the world, not the least of which are my concerns with whether or not the Electoral College's decisive landslide numbers will be monkeyed with and, messed around with in the coming days and or weeks. But never mind that, set that aside, right? Because you got a more pressing and urgent thing. As of this hot moment, as of Saturday, December 19th at 7:27 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, your beloved American government has moved the goalpost by 2.5 days or whatever it is, a day and a half now, and extended the government functioning and being funded long enough to have a weekend and then come back and argue and fight about it some more. Because they couldn't come to terms and make an agreement but as of yesterday, having had oodles of time to hash it out. So we live in this awkwardly familiar and yet sort of bizarrely uncharted territory of a government shutdown cliffhanger amid, which quite literally means at the middle of, a pandemic shutdown of epic proportions of, to put it kindly, incompetence and, many times over, failures of all kinds. Just to put it politely, one could put it in more heated terms. Now, whether the whole government funding thing will get sorted out in the next 24, 36, 48 hours, it will probably be a sort of diffused and no longer alarmist thing by the end of that 48-hour cycle, no matter what gets decided about it. And some new alarmist, crazy, cuckoo nut job, distracting trash can fire will have been started. Meanwhile, Trump seems to be sulking. Parts of his base seem to be taking a really weird victory lap, a tad early, because unless I'm overreading some of their statements, they seem to believe that he's gonna not leave office on the 20th of January. And I don't know. I could be wrong. I guess I could be getting fooled and or tricked by the machinery. I think I'm reading the machinery pretty accurately, which is it had fun. It pushed the pendulum to a new level that certainly confirmed several things. And now, for the purposes of diffusing the self-destructive anger, and I think sort of giving the world and itself a respite. The system's going to let, everything, the pendulum, swing pretty heavy over into deep into Team Blue territory. Why? Because that will outrage the right and that base that has tasted the divine glory of having a orange golden chosen one in office that was soon about to create some new, hitherto unimagined alt-right utopia on Earth, right? And now the left is getting to splooge all over the place and do that. And if there isn't a better mechanism than pushing a pendulum while also having everyone stuck on really spirally repetitious treadmills of distraction, of contentious, conflict-driven distraction, then you see how there's a need, there's an interest, a vested interest in letting the pendulum swing back just when you've got them going. Whoever they are, both sides. And they did. The left was really, really freaked out and afraid that we would have 4 more years of Donald J. Trump as, president, the 45th and the 46th term, doing the same sort of bull in a china shop, wrecking ball in a mausoleum, like whatever the fuck analogy you like, because he wasn't doing it. Well, there's all kinds of ways we could break down the analysis of what he has done, both in terms of official policy work, quote unquote, and shenanigans in the background. Because that's going to break wide open. That's only just sort of been peeking around at the edges, whatever the real outrage is. And yet here we are, folks. Here we are with a pretty serious systemic acceptance, despite the grumblings and the play acting and the pontificating and the dissemination of false promises and false sets of expectations to the base. The system is gearing up to welcome and accept a Biden-Harris administration. And if there's something I want to jab with a massive lance as an obvious through line for everyone, is that the system selects everyone, right? And everyone that gets to a certain level becomes unconsciously, and maybe to some people consciously, to some degree or another, complicit. Like, if you took a really hard look at Trump's actions and behavior, behind his own self-delusional statements and misleading propagandist claims, and behind whatever other layers of distractionary content that was disseminated amongst the base as pro-Trump content that was riddled with misleading stuff and aggrandizing, factually inaccurate content, right? Ultimately, when you cut past that, you can see that Trump's going to try to do what he's classically done, which is, get the most out of it he can, cut loose, burn all the bridges, walk away. Threaten to sue everybody, have someone ghostwrite a book or two with his name on it about, all of his grievances and how he was the best, and yet, there was such an evil, complicated conspiracy. And if he's lucky, and Biden is really pushy about this move forward, don't look back, don't cause a lot of antagonistic feelings by, there's a couple of degrees in which Biden can respond. He could stay hands off the DOJ, but also not overtly block any pursuit of justice that correctly and appropriately could be pursued against Trump as he returns to normal, everyday level classification. Even as, past president, former president, he's no longer in office. He may have security detail because of his fame and celebrity and having formally been in the office. But he's no longer in office, and he's no longer flimsily protected and partially, temporarily a king and above the law because of the DOJ memo phenomenon. Put a pin in that. If you don't know what that is, I've talked about it before on the podcast. You can look up the DOJ memo that says, a sitting president won't be indicted. That doesn't mean he hasn't done wrong. It just means the Department of Justice will bite its own tongue and not pursue while in office, which is ridiculous, and it's got everything to do with Agnew and what he did while everyone was angry and distracted about Nixon and pushing Nixon out. Apparently, from what I understand. Now, one of the valid critiques coming from the Trump base is that, these people who have been in the other arms of government for decades, they share a lot of burden of responsibility for how things are now. What the Trump base is misled on, in my humble opinion, about Trump is that he is somehow an outsider and fighting anything at all. He's complicit as anybody else who was given millions of dollars by their, super wealthy parents and taught how to cheat the system to benefit themselves and other wealthy people, and taught that that was the right way to do business, right? Taught that being borderline criminal and kind of basically a con artist, but constantly self-delusionally bluffing about it and about oneself and one's own greatness, that is the way to do things in America. That's pretty toxic. It's pretty toxic, folks. So, not the source of the problem, him as an individual, but an expression of a deeper systemic disease, both at a sort of societal level and a psychological level and a spiritual level, dare I be so bold as to say. And that's intrinsic to my theory. If you are a longtime listener of the show, my deepest, sincerest, humblest thanks for putting up with my cyclical, I sometimes fear perhaps a bit redundant approach and methodology. If you're new to the show and or confused by the show, just jump around, listen to a few of the really early episodes, like with this proviso, I'm gonna be ripping out and not right away, but by Valentine's Day, final recursive reference to this programming note, by just after Valentine's Day, by late, let's say March, I know, we'll build a whole promotion. By the Ides of March, which is one of those days that's like commonly referenced but not so well known anymore these days. By the Ides of March, for the funsies and shits and gigglesies, I'm setting a artistic and workflow set of deadlines that unless I've come to the frustrating but inescapable conclusion that it's just not worth the complicated effort and give it up and revert to just sort of singular voice, trying to keep it tight, trying to keep the show from going over time. And I'll let you know if that happens. But barring that, by the Ides of March, I'll have re-engineered, redesigned, and ultimately redeployed, and by that I mean taken down and re-uploaded, key episodes and created more of an interesting experience. Let's just leave it at that. A more interesting listener experience, which may entice some of you more established listeners to go back and revisit the catalog. Some episodes which you think you may have listened may have radically changed and become completely new experiences. But I also don't want to set myself up for radical failure. So I'm going to do the following. I'm going to stop talking about that so much. I'm going to try to focus on actually executing the creation of that content as a sort of sidebar sub-project. Here, it's difficult. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I've already kind of rambled about it for a couple of episodes now, sort of absentmindedly, because I'm fixated. But you'll see relatively soon, because once I have a whole finished episode that is a good example of what I mean, I'll plunk it. And I'm going to try to do that. It's Saturday. I'm going to take... No, I do want to do an episode tomorrow. I'm going to do a spiritual practice oriented episode tomorrow. I'm going to do it relatively early. I'm going to take the rest of today off, try to rest my voice and recover from abusing it. Same thing for tomorrow. And I'm going to take Monday off. I'm going to try in this intervening time to get sort of like a pilot episode done, which I will try to avoid making it a two-parter. But if it is a two-parter, I'll focus on only getting part 1 done, and it will go up Tuesday instead of a new Today's Nugget or a new Trumptopia Good Morning show. We'll do an episode of this new multiplex discussion panel, and it'll be a sort of meta episode to sort of introduce the new feature. And then, that's my immediate short-term goal. So you've got something to look forward to and hopefully be impressed, like, oh, he did it. And hopefully not be like, meh, what a dick, he didn't do it. But you never know. It's 60-40. It's up in the air. Either way, hopefully you'll continue listening and supporting the show. And then I'm going to take a few days off. I'm definitely not going to record anything over the Christmas holiday. And we're quickly kind of getting there. And it's so weird for me, folks, to be sitting at home on a Saturday in December. For those of you who don't know, let me dump this out and it'll be the end of the show. This is not what my life is usually like. I'm usually wicked exhausted, let me tell you. Like, having been busting my ass, working kind of stupid long days, especially once you calculate in my longer than almost everybody else at work commute. I'm up there. I'm in the top 3 longest commutes of everybody who works at the theater that I worked at as a lighting technician for live theatrical stage plays. And December, from Thanksgiving, from before Thanksgiving, because that's a busy patch. And then we get a little bit of downtime as far as the way it works out for me. I get a little bit of downtime. Usually, like a week or so of like, oh, not so much to do anymore. Chill. But still working. And then if I'm lucky, and I'm saying all this with love and respect and sincere admiration and deep, what do you call it when you've conjugated the word I miss? Like I'm missing it. I missed it. Not like I missed the ball, but I still am missing, continue to miss, feel the deep sorrow of loss for that job, even though it was technically only kind of like a survival job for me. You know, like I could have, should have, would have, might have been doing other things. And that's not a judgment on the place nor the people. I miss it. And right now we would be in the thick of it with our holiday tradition, our traditional holiday production, which they've done some sort of no audience virtual production of, and I'm a little jelly, but I totally understand that they probably put that together with a really skeleton crew in compliance with all the restrictions of the pandemic lockdown. But it's bizarre and at many levels truly unimaginable to me that I'm not at the theater from like whatever the fuck o'clock in the morning it is until 10 every night, which doesn't sound really late until you realize what hour I would have to get up in order to be up super early, have done a podcast show, showered, breakfast, informed by the news, recorded and posted, and like ready to go to work. Which means in previous years, I usually would have already totally gone on holiday hiatus. And maybe, just maybe, have been successfully doing a podcast show on my Monday is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday weekends. If you were lucky. I know that some years, in the intervening years, since I launched the show, I know that in at least 2 of the years, I checked out and said, bye-bye, guys. I will see you on the flip side. I'm not going to give a fuck about the podcast show. And I didn't mean that in a rude way. And I apologize for anybody that gets a little, touchy-feely for when I've done that kind of thing. Or when I say that kind of thing. Why am I sharing about that? So that you understand. Dear listener. My entire universe is not what it ought to have been, not what I expected, not what I thought was a genuine and kind of, humble and realistic, based on all given trends, set of expectations about where I would be right now. It's also been one chaotic clusterfuck of crazy and personal failure. Like, I could have, should have, would have been savvier, more prepared, more anticipatory of it happening, and more ready, willing, and motivated to, more ready, willing, and motivated to reinvent myself as a closet studio in my spare bedroom kind of artist, right? Like, there should be a green screen wall back here and better lighting situation, and I wouldn't be doing it in this room. It's the wrong room to film it. All the things. And I didn't. I sat and dealt with other stuff and meditated a lot and napped a lot and recovered a lot and struggled to, with my mental health a lot. And let's be frank, who didn't struggle with their mental health this year? Even people who didn't think they ever would say that out loud or saying that to themselves, like, wow, this has really forced me to struggle with my mental health and question, the illusion of sanity and how deep it goes, etc., etc. So let's all give each other a hug because that was the challenge, right? To survive, to get through it, to confront it, to heal with it, to realize that we all have our own spiritual trauma, and everyone we're fighting with about all this ideological stuff has their own spiritual trauma, which is equivalent. And while it may not be expressed in exactly the same way, and their life details may not be exactly the same as ours, and their political ideological preferences may not be precisely the same things we have, those things don't matter. Because at the biggest level and the largest perspective scale, they are another one of us. They are life itself being a human being, and are worthy of forgiveness, compassion, healing, and transformation, which requires, of course, them to step up and into and do the inner work themselves. That's you, friends. 101. 1-on-1, 101. Which one did I mean to say? Both, I suppose. Being a person, 101. It's growing up and out of everything that happened to us as a kid, as people who didn't ask to be born here, and now confront ourselves where we're at. And dealing with it and moving forward with it and realizing that, us versus them leads to a lot of dead people, just the way pretending COVID is going to go away or doesn't exist leads to a lot of dead people. And pretending that society isn't toxic leads to a lot of dead people. When this kicked off, I was just about to go off, and I was very preoccupied with, at the very early days of the conspiracy theory of development of content coming forth, and the sort of beginnings of this deployment of the pandemic shutdown. 7 million people a year die from a direct result of how much toxic shit is in our system, and it must be more. That's just a figure that some scientists somewhere, with perhaps a little bit of corruption in their agenda, who knows, with or without corruption, that was their one estimate. Let's be frank. Let's be really blunt and honest. If we were to broaden our parameters to be the most precise and the most inclusive, that number is probably larger. If we were to culminate everyone who dies, everyone's going to die, period, right? So we can't get all irrationally nihilistic about it. That's not helpful. That's nothing. That's meaningless talk. And it's often weirdly, curiously used by PSYOP programming, manipulative content to get you to agree to whatever their ideological framework is. Set that aside. Let's take all the component deaths that can be attributed to things that without man having created them wouldn't exist in nature, right? No one's dying in nature pre-man inventing it from massive amounts of radiation poisoning. I don't think, right? Unless some rare, bizarre, ore deposits of naturally occurring radioactive material, and you built a house on it because you're a moron and you didn't know anything about radioactive material because there was no science about it. Okay, exceptions. There they are. But all things normalized to an even playing field. Until we invented the atomic bomb, no one was living in fear of and or worrying about constantly, in a very kind of low grade, we forget about it kind of level, about an atomic bomb going off near you and or right on top of you, in top of your house, obliterating your house and destroying you, and or worse, allowing you to survive but suffer the progressive torture that is radiation poisoning until that kills you. And not, like, we worry about that now. We live under that constant pressure, and it doesn't even have to be like war. It could be the fact that there's my own nation state's stockpile laying about, and somebody from within our own country might decide to fuck around and find out what it's like to blow one of those things up. Or there may be an improbable as fuck computational failure, and or, they might be tinkering with letting the AIs control that shit, and it might be unexpectedly ahead of the learning curve and decide to blow us up, or test out, what it means to launch those things in real time. Who knows? There's an infinite. Can I live in fear of that? Of course not. Do I berate other people for living in fear of that? Also, of course not, because then that's not freedom. Hey, freedom bullies. Is it freedom to constantly be abused by people who are self-congratulatory, like self-masturbatory about their freedom, and also quite blindly, self-contradictorily tyrannical about imposing their own parameter of what life should be like on others? That's not freedom. I digress, folks. Where were we? Where was I going? What were we talking about? Nuclear bombs and dystopia. Here we are. I've been saying for a while, wake up, folks. World War III is already raging around us. We just aren't being forced to endure any of it directly or even remotely. Like, we're not getting shown very much of it so that it can just kind of rage on quietly in the background. Dystopia is now. The catch is, do we unite, heal, transform, and transcend? I say yes. And I say, talk about ultimate freedoms. This is so freedom. In Buddhism, enlightenment, Zen, meditation is so much more freedom. I don't even need to tell you how the fuck to do it. You just need to go and fucking do it. Right? Like, the freedom people think they're so freedom, and yet they're preoccupied telling people how to live and what not to do. Isn't that the opposite of freedom? I have rambled long enough, friends. As always, I bow to you in humility. Thank you for tuning in and listening to my wacky, raw, real, unscripted, radio talk show styled podcast that is the cosplay of what if my character jumped out of the books that I haven't finished writing yet and started telling the world and, his own opinion. And there you go. That's what it sounds like. Until next time, because there will be a next time, may peace, love, and grooviness blossom in your heart. Take it away, DJ Zed. Play us out. Did I already play a piece of music recently? No, we're about to. I already played that piece of music, didn't I? Play us out, dear animatronic friend, with the track you have informed me is to be pronounced Le Danse de Vie avec Mort. From Experimental, created on the GroovePad app as an alternative, wink wink nudge nudge say no more, to Remix Live, because Remix Live just refuses to work on my device anymore, which is tragedy. Take it away. Dystopia is now.